Rosie Rios, what is the U.S. Semiquincentennial Commission?
The U.S. Semiquincetennial Commission is a commission charged with planning the nation's 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 2026. We're hitting the ground running.
How did it get started?
So by legislation, Congress passed the formation of this body, and it includes 24 members. Of those 24 members, 16 are private citizens, 8 of them are standing members of Congress.
And when did it get started? What year was this created?
I was appointed, the legislation passed under Obama in 2016. I was appointed onto this commission in 2018, and then appointed as chair in 2022.
What's the budget?
Well, we've been fortunate by having congressional support. We are a congressional commission. We had at the beginning maybe $3 million of appropriations. Since I've been chair, we've had $15 million. We've had some private funding that we've raised. You might have heard a few things. So last May, we were fortunate enough to have Walmart come on board. By the end of 2024, we're extremely fortunate to have Coca-Cola on board. We've announced a few more since then. Stellantis, which includes Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram, the American brands, they have committed $150 million, mostly in kind. So, you know, my mandate to Congress was, you know, we can't do this with just federal appropriations. There has to be skin in the game, has to be a public-private partnership. So my commitment is to make sure that we at least match dollar for dollar what we're getting for appropriations, and we've exceeded that.
Can we, in this interview, call it the America250 Commission so I don't have to say semi-quincentennial?
Absolutely. Or just say America250. I mean, that is the brand. We don't have the benefit of an easy word like the bicentennial that we remember. So, yes, semi-quincentennial, which people should remember is pretty much just half of 500. But for our purposes, from a branding perspective, America250.
Will those who were alive during the bicentennial celebration see familiarities?
I think so. Well, I think in many ways, not just the time period kind of leading up to the celebrations, but also the celebrations themselves. So, look, I remember it. I was almost 11 years old. I was just finishing up the 5th grade. And what I remember about the bicentennial, I remember taking a field trip to the Oakland train station to see the Freedom Train. I remember seeing on our black and white TV the tall ships coming through the Boston and New York harbors. I still have my bicentennial quarter, which I actually carry with me. You know, 25 cents for an 11-year-old is a life-saving, so I do remember it very well. But, you know, for me, it's not just a memory, it's a feeling. So I do remember July 4th, 1976. It was a cloudy night in Hayward, California, but those fireworks were never brighter. And with the feeling that I had, look, my parents came from Mexico in 1958. And they landed in Hayward, California because my dad was a seasonal migrant worker for Hunt's Tomatoes, and they were based in Hayward. And they made the decision to land there permanently and to live their life. And my mom, bless her heart, you know, 11 years later and 9 kids later, she decided to leave an abusive relationship. My dad returned to Mexico. My mom could have returned to Mexico. Probably would have been easier for her to have the support of her family. But she made a very deliberate decision to stay in the United States and knowing we would have a better life. And so there in Hayward, California, with the help of our parish, St. Clement's Parish, we were able to have a great education. And somehow she was able to send all 9 of us off to college. So for me, on July 4th, 1976, just finishing up 5th grade, knowing I was in a great educational system, I felt like I had the whole future in front of me. And again, it's not a memory, it's a feeling. And I was grateful, very grateful to my mom, grateful to this country. I'm the biggest patriot out there. And so when I think about today, and when people ask me, how do you know you're going to be successful in 2026? My answer is the same. I want as many Americans as possible to feel like this is a land of opportunity all over again. Exactly how I felt and how I still feel today.
Well, Rosie Rios, we're taping this interview near July 4th, 2025. Yeah. When does the semi-quincentennial kick off?
Well, we've kicked off already. I mean, we've had a number of programming opportunities already out there for some time. So we launched in the public domain as a commission 2 years ago with America's Invitation. So America's Invitation is a video portal where anyone could still go onto our website at America250.org and submit their video of their ideas, memories of the bicentennial, really just kind of a light toe in the water that this is happening. We launched that in the great state of Wisconsin at the Milwaukee Brewers against the Chicago Cubs game. And our partner was Major League Baseball, next door, YWCA. We unveiled a huge flag, which was amazing. We had the first pitch thrown out by 4 community members. And again, that was our big announcement of America's invitation and what I would call the 3-year count up to 2026. It was fabulous. And since then, we've done a number of other activities and much more to come.
From your website, we have been coordinating closely with the Trump administration and are delighted by their deep commitment and vision for this important milestone, as well as President Trump's personal dedication to make America's 250th a historic success. How are you working with the White House?
Those are my words. Look, I truly believe that we can't be successful without the support of this president and without the support of this administration. And I proactively reached out. In fact, last November, 2024, after President Trump was declared the winner, I had a memo ready, a recommendation, a series of recommendations. I sent the memo over to the Chief of Staff's office and a parallel letter to the First Lady's office. And in this memo, I had some recommendations. The first one being, if you can please issue an executive order to mobilize the federal agencies, we would be extremely grateful. And the reason why that was important is because our legislation forming this commission includes some of the federal agencies, not all of them. It includes a lot of the cultural ones, the Library of Congress, Smithsonian, National Archives, but it doesn't include some of the other agencies like Treasury, like Commerce. We had been working with NASA already, and so by having the federal agencies participate fully, it would just make it a much more robust initiative. You know, we represent all 3 branches of government, right? So even the Supreme Court is part of our commission, and I am appointed by the president. So for me, to make sure that the president knew that we wanted to work together as a congressional commission, that we needed their help to do so. And look, I got a response immediately. And let me just say, on the 10th day of the Trump administration, is when they issued the executive order to form Task Force 250, which is essentially exactly what we wanted, mobilizing federal agencies to start their own planning efforts for the 250th. And it's been an amazing journey. Task Force 250 has been fabulous. We've executed a memorandum of understanding with them, and we've hit the ground running together. So look, the only way you're going to reach 350 million Americans is if we do all this together. So that 350 for 250 is probably going to be the 3 most important words you're going to take away from this interview.
Explain 350 for 250.
So 350 million Americans. So according to the census, the U.S. will be at about 330 million people in 2026. And of course, if you include our embassies, our military bases overseas, our expats, we are going to reach 350 million Americans, no doubt in my mind. And look, no one else has ever made that declaration, right? No one else has ever said, we're going to engage 350 million Americans in anything. We know we're going to do that through this effort, and we need the president to do that.
What was the A250's role with the Army parade on June 14th?
Yeah, we were completely supportive of that. I mean, look, we are doing this together, again, with the administration, and so, and I think people are aware of this already, but the planning of the Army's 250th was actually started under the Biden administration. So there are a number of milestones coming up as our country in 1775 had to prepare itself, had to fortify itself, and realize what it had to do in order to become its own governance, right? So the Army's 250th on June 14th, we knew that was coming. The Post Office in July, the Navy in this coming October, the Marines in November. That is part of our history, and it is our responsibility to make sure that we celebrate and commemorate those activities all the way through.
Rosie Rios, telling 250 years of American history can be complicated. How do you do it?
Well, our history is complicated, right? Our future is complicated. I mean, you know, this is what it means to be the oldest democracy in the world, and democracy is messy. So yes, I mean, this is why, again, it's the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and that is really the beginning of a very long journey. But we all know the journey started long before that, right? I mean, so of course we're starting with the American Revolution, but in addition to that, look, the American Revolution wasn't even over until 1783, right? And if you think about our history, 1776 for the Declaration of Independence, 12 years later, before the ratification of the Constitution. And then George Washington didn't become president until the year after that, in 1789. So that journey, for me, isn't just a one and done, right? This has to be what I call the movements and the moments, right? The moments of celebration, fireworks, so much I wish I could share with you right now, so much more coming. You'll hear a lot more coming up. But the movement is just as important. And the way I define the movement is our programming that we intend to have long after 2026 is over. I mean, look, 2026 is just a moment in time, but it's also for the U.S. where we're going to have so many other milestones intersecting with that, right? So in addition to the 250th, as you know, the World Cup is mostly going to be in the U.S. in 2026. We are coordinating very closely with FIFA. In addition to that, 2 very short years after that is the Olympics in Los Angeles in 2028. Now, last year at the Milken Global Conference, I was on a panel with Gianni Infantino, the head of FIFA, along with Lindsey Vonn and Janet Evans, and we're talking about the intersection of these 3 milestones that, for the U.S., if you think about it, those are all global. Every single one of those are global milestones. You're going to have billions of people watching the U.S. in those 2 very short years, and the more we work together, the more we leverage that momentum, again, we're going to go past 350 million Americans. And that is the goal. I mean, look, we are the only country in the world that has every other country represented in it. So while we are not the world is us. And that has a responsibility. So I take our history very, very seriously and the journey it took to get to where we are today. But this is as much about the future as it is the past. And that's why, again, this movement is so important.
Is the America250 Commission going to include not just the signing of the Declaration, but some of the events in our history, including some of the major wars, Civil War, World War II, moon landing, and some of the social issues that we've dealt with over the years?
Absolutely. I think it has to. It has to. I mean, look, think about it. Well, let's start with the Army Parade. I mean, I was there. It was fantastic. It was exactly what it should have been. And what I loved about the Army Parade was they actually did start with what it was like during the American Revolution. They moved on to, the Civil War, World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and they showed kind of the transition, not just of the uniforms, but also the artillery, the weaponry, the advanced technologies that were used, the drones. It was so, I felt proud. I felt extremely proud. And something else to remember, this is one of the lowest times in our history where it's been very difficult to recruit for our military, and those numbers are starting to rise. And I think that's an important message. That is, everything that we do for America250, we're always going to honor our military. We're always going to honor our veterans. Our country was founded in service. And so that's a big message for us. And that service should continue on. And we want to show that the military absolutely is an honorable path forward for this next generation.
Are you being advised by historians?
Absolutely. Yes. Doris Kearns Goodwin is our Boston ambassador. I just did a fabulous fireside chat with her for the Lexington Concord celebration. She lived in Concord. Yes, we have a number of folks that have reached out to us that we're also working with. One of our partners is the American Association of State and Local Historians. And again, a lot of our programming partners, National Council of Social Studies, a number of other organizations, Mount Vernon, of course, Colonial Williamsburg, Monticello, obviously working very, very closely with all of them.
Rosie Rios, are we teaching civics enough in, K through 12 and in college?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I grew up with Schoolhouse Rock. I don't know if you remember Schoolhouse Rock, right? How much fun that was. But I do remember clearly in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, that's when we start to have those history lessons, American history in general. Did my kids learn it the same way? Probably not. I would say no. So we are taking that very, very seriously. In fact, iCivics is our civics partner. They just conducted a survey of resources that could be helpful for states to consider. And so we're about to talk about that as a commission and what that means and how we could put these resources out there for states to consider as well. But I think absolutely more can be done.
One of the initiatives that America250 is doing is the field trips.
Yes.
America's Field Trips. What is that?
America's Field Trip. That was one of our national signature programs that's still going on today. America's Field Trip is a national student competition for grades 3 through 12. We get to answer the question, what does America mean to me? It was one of the first ideas that I presented to the commission when I was, my first meeting as chair in September of 2022. And it was very well received. The beauty of America's Field Trip is that the winners get to choose from a series of backstage experiences, most of which are with our federal agencies, mostly with the National Park Service, for these once-in-a-lifetime experiences that have never happened before. And it was intentional to start with the next generation of leadership, to inspire them, to have them think about their future, and to have these interactive, connective opportunities, again, that they'll be talking about for generations to come. So, for example, one of the field trips that I participated in last summer it wasn't just a tour of the Statue of Liberty. We actually took the National Park Service private boat from Manhattan Island to Liberty Island. We got up to the Crown, which normally doesn't happen on the public tour. We got to walk the hallowed halls of Ellis Island when no one else was there. We were hosted for lunch by the CEO of BNY, Robin Vince. We got to see the markets room, the trading floor, the cybersecurity command center. We ended the day at the New York Federal Reserve, getting an overview of monetary policy, and then getting into the deep storage, into the vault. I had this one young woman come up to me and she said, I feel like I won the golden ticket, but this is better than Willy Wonka. You know, for many of these kids, first time on a plane, first time out of their state, first time on a family vacation. And what a great way to think about our history. But more importantly, I bet for a lot of those kids, it was probably the first time they actually got to feel or visualize their future, right? For many of them who didn't even know what the Federal Reserve does, or even thinking about, you know, what does it mean to be a National Park Service Ranger, or maybe thinking about, you know, something like BNY, or even the Cybersecurity Command Center. Those are real, kind of tangible, immersive opportunities for them to say, I can do that. I feel like that's my direction that I want to go for my future. And that is just as important about what we're trying to accomplish, again, in terms of the historical aspect, but also, again, the inspirational component.
What is BNY?
BNY Mellon, used to be called BNY Mellon, is the
bank.
Bank of New York. Alexander Hamilton's bank, but they're called BNY now. So, yes.
What was it like to walk up to the Crown? Is it rickety?
A lot of stairs. I was winded. But it was fun. You know, it's a little, you know, I wouldn't say claustrophobic, but if you have claustrophobia, I would be cautious. But it was fun. It was fun. You know, maybe someday we'll get into the torch. But the Crown was really, really fabulous. I mean, you can't beat those views. But again, for these kids to know that you're doing something that no one else can do, that's pretty fun. So this year, in fact, you know, we received thousands of submissions in our pilot program, which was pretty amazing considering we only did it from March through May. So this last one was for the full school year. We got thousands of submissions from all 56 parts of our country, by the way. So the 50 states, DC, and the 5 territories. Everyone was represented. And like some of the, I'm definitely going to go on the field trips this summer, which I'm so excited about. So one of them is the backstage tour of the Kennedy Space Center. Who doesn't want to do that? So, and many others, you know, the Washington Zoo, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the candlelight tour of Fort Point in San Francisco, Angel Island. I mean, there's just so many great things, Yellowstone, so many great things to choose from. I may have to go on all of them, I'm not sure, but we'll have to leave room for the other commissioners too. But
Rosie Rios, is it too late for students to participate in America's Field Trip?
For this round, absolutely, but stay tuned, more to come.
I understand that your portrait is hanging at Harvard. How did you get from Hayward, California, daughter of an immigrant, to Harvard?
Well, oh gosh, I didn't know we were going to talk about that. So look, I am the American dream, clearly. And again, my mom made that deliberate decision. Everything I do is definitely for her, no doubt. She just passed away, so it's still very moving for me.
What kind of work did Mom do?
Everything. Look, we received government support. We received the support of our church, but we all worked very, very young. And she was the neighborhood interpreter. She was the neighborhood nurse. She was the neighborhood driver. She worked at our church all the time. She took care of a lot of other kids in the neighborhood too. She made tamales for catering. We all worked very, very, very young.
Nine kids.
9 kids. All of us worked. I worked full-time in high school. I had the best job in the world. I had this job that I had that I found through the Summer Youth Employment Program, where I got a chance to work at the headquarters of our county library system, Alameda County. I did that for 4 years, and then sometime through college. I was working 32 hours a week, and I felt like I won the lottery because I could have access to any book I ever wanted. And I do believe that experience of books being the window to the world was how I got into Harvard. Clearly, that was the case. And so, yes, in 2019, my portrait was unveiled at Harvard at Winthrop House, which is where I lived as an undergraduate for your last 3 years there. What was great about 2019 is it also coincided with the commencement of my son, also from Harvard. So it was great because my whole family was there, and I felt kind of bad. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like it just happened to be the timing. I felt bad kind of encroaching on my son's graduation. And his answer was, I wouldn't have it any other way. My mom was there. Yes, so I'm still there at Winthrop House.
Why did they put your portrait there? It's not because you're from Hayward, California.
No. Well, I did start something at Harvard. It took me 3 years to get it up and running, called Cultural Rhythms. It wasn't intended to be about race exclusively. It wasn't intended to be about anything other than how students want to express themselves. And so I happen to be the director of the Ballet Folklorico at Harvard, which is a Mexican folk dancing group, and we had very few opportunities to perform around the Boston area. And so I thought to myself, look, we all have very interesting backgrounds. Wouldn't it be great if no matter who you were or what you were doing, we could have this kind of student activity where we could all come together to do whatever we felt we wanted to express ourselves, whether it's through poetry or music or any other expression. And so it took me, again, a couple years to get that up and running. It started in 1986, and it was under the Harvard Foundation. Our first MC or host that year was Debbie Allen, Broadway pioneer, still very active. And so next in 2026 will be the 40th of Cultural Rhythms. So I'm really excited that it coincides with 2026. It's still going strong today. I remember one year I even co-hosted with Larry Summers, who was president at the time. That was, I think, in 2003. We've had many co-hosts over the years. And it's been, what I loved about, and I still love about Cultural Rhythms, again, is you actually have these very interesting new talents that form just to prepare for Cultural Rhythms. Like I remember there was one year where the Harvard undergraduate drummers, or THUD, actually made their debut, which is this student group that used those plastic cups to make music. It was incredible. And when I had a chance to meet them backstage, I was hosting that year, and I said, whatever made you form this group? And the answers was kind of the same. They said they were all former percussionists of some kind. They've been doing it their whole lives. They wanted to do something similar, but still very kind of novel and different. And so they came up with this concept. And it was just so beautiful to think that that type of talent and creativity can still be nurtured and shared in that way.
Will the arts be part of America 250?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have a couple of ways to do so. So one is America's Soundtrack. America's Soundtrack is a multi-volume playlist of anthems being led by executive producer Emilio Estefan, who's already contributed. He and Gloria have already contributed. Absolutely, and she's our Miami ambassador. So they've already contributed a couple of songs. Of course, they have access to all the talent in the world. Maybe we'll do one which, instead of celebrating our independence from Great Britain, maybe we'll do a collaboration with Great Britain. So more to come on that. And then we have another great activity, America's Performance, which of course are going to be these big broadcasts, concert series. This is the beauty of having access to your national parks or the Lincoln Memorial or the Statue of Liberty. So again, much more to be announced about all of that. But absolutely, look, the celebration of our country's culture has to be part of that, whether it is ballroom dancing, whether it is country line dancing, whether it is through music, poetry, etc. That is absolutely in the spirit of Cultural Rhythms as well.
So if somebody has a $1 bill, a $5 bill, whatever, in their wallet, if they pull it out, there's a good chance your name is on that.
There's a very, very good chance. So yes, as Treasurer of the United States, I served for 8 years, and so that's a lot of money printed during that time. And it was also in 2013, I think, is when the new $100 bill was printed. And that year alone, I think it was about $700 billion of $100 bills. So yes, I think my name is on, I think it's like 1.8 trillion out of the 2.2 trillion in circulation worldwide. So yes, happy to sign one for you.
So if somebody meets you, can you sign that bill for them?
Sure, absolutely.
Is that allowed?
Yeah, well, it's allowed. If my signature is on there, I'm merely validating my signature. Of course it's allowed, absolutely.
What was it like to tour Fort Knox?
Oh my goodness. So the way I think about Fort Knox, and if people don't know this, the U.S. government has about 268 million ounces of gold. About 60% of it is in Fort Knox. Some part of it is in Denver, some part of it is in New York. But when you go to Fort Knox, what's really interesting about it, for anyone who remembers that old TV series Get Smart, where you have those doors that you have to go through, steel doors, different types of doors, that's what it feels like. But here's the fun part about Fort Knox. You actually have to be weighed before you go in, just to make sure you weigh the same when you go out. True story. And then also, if you do want to hold the gold, you and this is the same thing in New York too, you have to wear steel-toed shoes. So one of those bricks of gold, actually, how much do you think they weigh? One of those bricks of gold?
10 pounds?
28 pounds. So gold is much more dense than people think, right? So when you actually hold one of those bricks, you actually, like, it drops a little because you're surprised how heavy it is. But it's fun. It's a fun experience.
Who are some of your other corporate partners besides Walmart you talked about?
Oh, gosh. Well, I mentioned Coca-Cola. Very, very grateful to them. And then I mentioned Stellantis, again, the four American brands, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. And then we did have a whole series of sponsors who came in for the parade, the Army parade. We had Lockheed, we had Palantir, we had a number of other sponsors come in, and we know this is only the beginning. I mean, and there's going to be different sponsors for different activities. There are some folks who only want to do specific events. There are some folks who only want to write a check, and they're very happy to participate, and we say thank you. And there are some, like Coca-Cola, like Walmart, who really want to be involved in our programming. And I'll give you a great example of this one. And actually, this is also going to be with Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. So Our American Story, which is launching in July. Our American Story is a 4-part series where it's going to be the largest oral history project in our country. And we started Our American Series actually last year, where on July 4th, 2024, you could go online to our website, and you could still do this today. You could nominate whose story you think should be preserved in perpetuity at the Library of Congress. And then we're hitting the road. We're going to go to all 56 parts of our country. We're going to go to the Deep South. We're going to go to farmland. We're going to go to rural America. And this is in partnership with Walmart and Coca-Cola and our sponsors, where not only are we going to have these 250 high-quality videos that's going to include Main Street America, that's going to include living legends, titans of industry, former presidents, but in addition to that, Walmart would like us to use their parking lots to have these Main Street activations. We're going to go to 25 different parts of the country for these, what I'm going to call these neighborhood cookouts. So this is going to be where Airstream is going to have their custom Airstream with the America250 logo. This is when we're going to have a Dodge Ram, a custom Dodge Ram that's going to pull these Airstreams. We're going to have these custom Jeeps. They're going to have the America250 logo on them. We're going to have Coca-Cola products distributed to the public. We're going to have Walmart products distributed to the public. And we want this to be that kind of local kind of, block party. We're going to have caravans. We're hopefully going to have these Airstream caravans from around the areas, these Jeep caravans from around the areas. And we're hoping to do this where we might even have pop-ups. Maybe there's going to be pop-up entertainment, pop-up influencers, announcements made around the country. And again, we want to go to parts of the country that have been untouched or undiscovered, and really get to who Main Street really represents, real people with real stories. And I think that's the part that I'm really looking forward to. In addition to that, we're providing technology to local libraries and museums for them to also record stories. In addition to that, we are actually speaking right now with several potential broadcast partners to do the story of Our American Story. So kind of following us around, kind of doing the backstage tour, if you will, and I'll give you a great example. So I had the privilege of being invited by President and First Lady Bush to brief them on America250. This was in May of 2024. And myself, my fellow commissioners, Kathy Gillespie and Lynn Young, went to see them. And we were at the Presidential Center in Dallas. And as we're briefing them, it was so exciting. And then, if you get me in front of that captive audience, I'm going right in. And so I said to the president, I said, Look, we all remember when you threw out that first pitch at the first game of the World Series following 9/11. And I certainly don't need to tell you, but in 2026 is the 25-year anniversary of 9/11, and we can't do this without you. Would you consider being our honorary national co-chair? And we are extending the same invitation to President and First Lady Obama. Those are the two most recent presidents who aren't running for re-election. And you know, what was so beautiful about that moment is that, of course, you know, they did say yes, and we made that announcement of Presidents and First Ladies Bush and Obama in July of last year, in the middle of the conventions, in the middle of the debates, to really demonstrate that this is a bipartisan, all-partisan effort. But what was so profound about that visit is when we had that private tour of his presidential center that included this amazing exhibit of 9/11. Obviously, he lived through it. It was very important to him, and we will put 9/11 front and center as part of our commemoration. That was really kind of our nation's last kind of frontline defense, if you will, of a major terrorist activity. And so we want to make sure that we never forget. And that was a very moving experience. And so if that were part of the documentary, if you will, of the story of our American story, that's what we want to capture, are those moments.
And since you mentioned the honorary co-chairs, let's look at a little video from the A250 Commission.
Absolutely. I get chills. I still get chills. Every day I get chills. And by the way, I don't think I mentioned this. Ready for this? In 1986, I was Harvard's student representative for their 350th anniversary. So Harvard turns 390 years old when our country turns 250 years old next year. But it's kind of, I don't know, serendipitous, right? That I got to participate in that, and here I am for the country, which you can't make this up.
All right, we got the 50 states, but you're touting 56 locations.
Yes, so the 50 states, DC, and the 5 territories. That's the 56 locations. In fact, we established America250 state and territory commissions in all 56 parts of those countries.
All right, we're going to have a test. I'm trying to do it myself. What are the 5 territories?
Well, let's start with you. What do you think they are?
Puerto Rico, Guam, Northern Marianas?
Mariana Islands, yes.
All right, your turn.
Oh,
you get the last 2.
All right, so let's see. And in fact, Puerto Rico was our last state and territory commission that was codified. U.S. Virgin Islands.
Of course.
And Samoa.
Thank you. They're the 5. Tell the story of the logo. How was that created?
Yeah.
And how much debate around
Isn't it wonderful? So that's actually the second version of our official logo. So one of the first things that we did as a commission in that 2018-2019 time period was the first logo actually had the font of the 250 as the same font as currency. And so it kind of had this old historic feel to it, and it was very, very cool. What we learned very quickly, though, is because the currency font is a lot of little dots and didn't perform well digitally. So when you're looking at it on a mobile phone, it was really, the clarity wasn't there. And so we knew we had to do something different. And so we actually brought in fact, it was the same designer as the bicentennial mark. And so Chernaoff was the firm. And so what they did is, you know, obviously sticking to the red, white, and blue, as we really loved that they did. But we as a commission actually voted on it. We had several to choose from, but we felt that the one that we chose was the most kind of fluid. It was the one that had the most kind of activation prospect.
It's like a continuous ribbon.
Isn't it great? It's a ribbon, but again, you could bring it to life. You could really, you know, when you see it on some of our videos, it really just kind of dances with you. It's really creative, and again, you could do all kinds of different things to it. And because of the kind of the curves on it, it works so well, whether it's on a vehicle, whether it's on a product. You know, you're going to see lots of great products coming with that logo. So we think think it couldn't be better. And the fact that it was a unanimous decision by the commission, we all stand behind it, and we have only heard amazing things about it.
Well, President and Mrs. Trump are going to be at the fireworks July 3rd in Iowa
Absolutely.
to kick off this
Yes.
18 months.
Yes.
Who is Monica Crowley, and what is your work with her?
Yeah. So Monica Crowley, Ambassador Crowley, is the chief of protocol. She's also the designated spokesperson on behalf of America250 in a lot of our activities. She's amazing. I invited her to our planning commission meeting in March. We have a lot of mutual friends. We're so thrilled to have her on board, and she's a great representative.
What's your answer to the critique about corporations, Stellantis, Coca-Cola, Walmart participating in this?
Well, I think it has to be a public-private partnership. As I mentioned, that was my commitment to Congress, is we can't just rely on federal appropriations. Look, I do remember in the bicentennial how we had a lot of those kind of, I remember leading up to the bicentennial, Coca-Cola, remember, had that whole initiative called Hilltop, where they had that great song that actually charted, "I like to teach the world to sing." Who doesn't remember that from that period? So I mean, that is part of our culture. And again, that song actually, I think, charted on Billboard. So to bring that kind of ability to have the largest global brand come on board with us is truly an honor. They're doing amazing things already, and you're going to hear so much more coming from them.
I remember bicentennial minutes.
Yes.
Are we going to see semi-quincentennial minutes?
I think you're going to see a lot of similar activities. Again, I mean, the beauty of the bicentennial minute was, again, it was kind of this kind of soundbite, right, of history, right? And you're going to see a lot of that. And we're going to decentralize it. We think there's a lot of great organizations out there that can also do that as well. And so our goal, and obviously collaborating with C-SPAN, is to find, again, those moments of real Main Street minutes. That's what I want to see, is Main Street minutes, right? Again, about our history, but I also, that's the beauty of having Our American Story, or what we did with America's Invitation, is hearing from real people, real lives, real aspirations, and real opinions. That is our democracy.
Will we see coins?
Absolutely, yes. So in 2020, look, I worked on this legislation for 5 years. So if you've seen right now, as we speak, the American Women on Quarter series, that's part of a 10-year program. So it's 4 years of 5 women per year, so 20 women. This is the last year of that series. Then it goes into next year, which is a year of semi-quincentennial coins. And then starting in 2027, the coins are going to shift to youth sports. So that legislation passed in 2020. After 5 years of effort on my part, and thank you to a number of other members of Congress who were so helpful on that to make that happen. But that's going to include our semi-quincentennial quarters. So that was actually signed by President Trump in December of 2020. So very grateful for that.
Well, going back to your previous role as U.S. Treasurer, are we going to see Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill? I
don't think so. No, I don't think so. The $20 bill was always out there in the late 2020s. The next note to be redesigned was always the $10 bill. The $10 bill was selected a long time ago based on counterfeiting threats in terms of parts per million. That's how denominations are selected. It's not something you pull out of a hat and I want to do the 20 because I think the 20 should be redesigned. That's not how it works. So when I was Treasurer of the United States, I was also chair of the Advanced Counterfeit Deterrence Steering Committee. This is the only formal collaborative that includes Treasury, the Federal Reserve, and Secret Service. And so as the chair, I'm the one that made the recommendations to the Secretary of the Treasury, who has the final say by law, not the President, not Congress. So it's the Secretary of the Treasury who makes that determination. Look, any one of these secretaries could snap their fingers and make a decision. But again, there's a process in place for how notes are redesigned. And it's based on mostly these security features, both overt and covert. So for example, that blue security ribbon that you see in the $100 bill, that took 14 years to get that ribbon. It's 500,000 microlenses, much more sophisticated than hologram. and very hard to counterfeit. So, that's the primary purpose of redesign. Now, that being said, sure, every redesign effort, a generation of currency, has a theme. And just so you're aware, the theme for the previous generation of notes, which that $100 bill was part of, that theme was symbols of freedom. So if you look on the $10 bill, you see the torch of the Statue of Liberty, we the people. If you look on the $100 bill, you see the quill of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, right? So those symbols of freedom were very, very important, especially when the first note of that generation was released. That was in 2002. That was the $20 bill. So why was symbols of freedom important for that period of time? Well, it was post 9/11. And to be able to look at those symbols and remind all of us about the values in which our country was founded was so important. So the theme for this next generation of notes, which was approved by Secretary Geithner and remains the theme of today, I'm not sure how many people know this story, but the theme is democracy. And who would have thought how relevant it would be throughout this time period and leading up to obviously 2026. And so this concept of redesigning our currency with this theme of democracy, how I made the pitch, it wasn't women for the sake of women. It was under this theme. And the way this theme was recommended, and it was my recommendation for democracy, is because as I was looking through that moment of time in terms of what was happening during that era. Look, I was part of the Treasury Federal Reserve transition team at the height of the financial crisis in 2008 under Secretary Paulson and President Bush. That's how I got my start. I was managing director of investments for a $22 billion firm based in San Francisco. I was feeling, obviously, what was happening with the financial crisis. And at the same time, our world was turning upside down. We already had, what happened in 2007 that really turned our world around in ways, in technological ways that we never anticipated. 2007 was the iPhone, right? And then during that period of 2008, 2009, that was kind of the mass scale use of social media. That was Facebook, that was Twitter. Some might say that, that we elected our first African American president because of social media. But look what was happening overseas, right? And so it was the Arab Spring, what was happening in Turkey, right? And giving a voice to the voiceless through social media, through this kind of these uprisings and these movements. It dawned on me that when the first note was going to be unveiled as part of this redesign process, it was intended to be 2020, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. 2020. That's the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote. What better way to think about giving a voice to the voiceless than thinking about 51% of your population being able to participate in the governance process? That is how this theme of democracy came forward, and that's how my recommendations came forward. So again, not a woman for the sake of a woman, but this theme of democracy that happened to coincide with the timing of the 19th Amendment.
Rosie Rios, chair of the U.S. Semiquincetennial Commission. I've been practicing that word quite a bit.
You did a great job.
Back on your website, and I'm old enough to remember these types of things, America's road trip. I remember packing up in the station wagon, and off we'd go across the country.
Absolutely. Well, we think America's road trip is going to be a huge part of how we're thinking about our American story, and also how the Department of Transportation is also doing the Great American Road Trip, which is amazing. So it's the 100th anniversary of Route 66. So think about Route 66, right? From Chicago to the west, I don't know, what is that, 2,600 miles, something along those lines. So to revisit that all over again as part of this and have Secretary Duffy participate, I mean, what a great way to get Americans out there and rediscover our country all over again, our national treasures, our national parks, and again, just real American experiences.
And the archives, how is the archives a partner?
So the National Archives is part of our commission. They're in our enabling legislation. They're obviously, working with us as we are working with them to make sure that all our documentation, all these records get managed appropriately and for posterity's sake. So they're our partner moving forward on all of this. Look, let's not forget, the National Archives has the Charters of Freedom, right? So when you visit the National Archives, you will see the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, all in that one gallery. It's pretty amazing. So they represent our history in every way, shape, and form.
Rosie Rios, I would think with Philadelphia and Washington on the East Coast that this could become a very East Coast-centric celebration. Well, because of all the history.
Absolutely, but this is sea to shining sea, and it has to be. I say from Guam to Alaska, from Fairbanks to Philadelphia, and everything in between. Think about how we were as a country in 1776. What did we look like then, right? So let's start from the West. Alaska was Russia, right? California was Mexico, or Spain in there, and then we had Six Flags at one point. Any point in time over Texas. We doubled our footprint with the Louisiana Purchase, with France. Interspersed through all of that are the indigenous and slave experiences. So, we are a nation of nations, and that history of what it took to become a state, every state has their story. This is why we set up those 56 state and territory commissions. The federal government can't tell their stories. The states have to tell their stories. And even California, this year in 2025, is the 175th anniversary of California. So to have these states tell their own stories is just as important. And that's why the grassroots part of this is going to be key. Look, I intend to be in New York on December 31st, ringing in 2026, so this coming December 31st, ringing in 2026 in New York in Times Square, and then hopefully 7 hours later, getting to California for our float in the Rose Parade. I'll figure that one out. But again, that sea to shining sea has to be part of this. Everyone has to feel like this is their commemoration and celebration, the same way I felt on July 4th, 1976.
You brought up social media earlier. Many of us now go to our own websites, our own feeds, whatever we want to look at, and we don't necessarily have the shared knowledge that we used to.
Yeah, we definitely lost that connectivity, not just through social media, but also during the pandemic. That's why you're going to see that a lot of our programming is very interactive, very physical. You saw the video, one of our great tent poles is going to be America Innovates. I was born and raised in Silicon Valley, but Silicon Valley is a state of mind, right? Silicon Valley is in Kentucky, it's in North Carolina, it's in Massachusetts. And so America Innovates is our way of bringing technology to high school students who otherwise would never have those opportunities. And when you touch something, your brain synapses go into a totally different direction where you start to get into that third dimension, right? The third dimension of feeling, right? It was what I was talking about earlier about these kids being able to see their future, visualize their future. When you touch something, when you hold something, whether it's that semiquincetennial quarter or something else, you start to feel. So, we're bringing technology to the masses. We're bringing these experiences out into Main Street. That's going to be what's going to be so important. And so, social media certainly serves its purpose. There has to be more, and that's that human experience is what we want to capture.
And all 50 states have commissions, correct?
All 56 states and territories.
Sorry.
So that was, look, I made two very lofty pledges when I became chair in 2022. And at my first commission meeting, September of 2022 as chair, I said to our commissioners, we're going to do two things. One is we're going to establish a state and territory commission in all 56 parts of our country, the 50 states, DC, and the 5 territories, which is not easy. To form a state commission is either by state legislation or executive order of the governor or administrative order. Try doing that in one state. To do it in 56 states is impossible. In fact, I remember President Bush letting us know that good luck to you on that one. But thankfully, I spoke at the National Governors Association conference. That heat map turned overnight. Literally, in the third week of December 2024, the governor of Guam signed that last executive order. We reached all 56 when we said we would, which is the end of 2024. So look, they have the keys to the castle. We just launched this master calendar and interactive map. We're giving each of the state and territory commissions their ability to populate what's happening in their own respective states.
Rosie Rios, if somebody is listening to us right now and thinks, wow, I want to be a part of this, I want to get active,
yep.
What's the best way?
America250.org. You can get online. You could look at our master calendar. You could sign up for information. You could still submit your video for America's Invitation. You can nominate someone for Our American Story, still online. lots of ways to get involved. You can volunteer. No, we need 350 million Americans to be engaged. And by the way, the second pledge that I made when I became chair was to form the largest bicameral, bipartisan congressional caucus on the Hill. Now, if you know how congressional caucuses work, these are discretionary issue-specific subcommittees of Congress. Not every member joins, and they usually have to be pretty fail-safe in order for a member to join. So the average size is anywhere between 20 and 40 members. So for me to say something as ambitious as that, I remember a lot of people saying there's no way that's ever going to happen. So we had to beat the Adoption Caucus at 145 members. Oh my goodness. Remember, average size, 20 to 40 members. We had to beat the Sportsman's Caucus at 238 members. Today, where do you think we are today?
Well, there are 535 members of Congress,
right.
or seats. I'm going to say 535.
Oh, I wish. Gosh. Come on. I wish. We're over 300 now. We are very close, and we will be any minute now the largest bicameral, bipartisan congressional caucus on record in the history of our country. And we're almost equally represented, Democrats and Republicans, and it's happening organically. We're not finding one and finding the other. The fact that this Congressional Commission is getting that level of support from this Congressional caucus says a lot in this day and age. I think Congress is ready. I think our country is ready. This president is ready. We want this to happen. We want these 350 million Americans. 350 for 250 is going to be a reality.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What do those words mean to you?
Everything. You say those words, and who do you think I think about? My mom. I think about my mom. I think about my daughter, too. I have a son and a daughter. Look, our girls will be, here's what I think about it. My son, he's going to be just fine. Our sons will be fine. Our girls have to climb. My daughter is the hardest worker out there. My son, too. But when I think about what I'm doing and why I'm doing this, it is in honor of my mom. It is about her legacy. And it's to inspire my daughter and to keep them going. And again, to feel that they've been given, my kids have been given this gift, this privilege, this American dream opportunity. You know, when we were planning the Boston Tea Party, the 250th of the Boston Tea Party with Boston, with the state of Massachusetts, this is December of 2023, we intentionally, it was my idea, we intentionally launched that weekend with a naturalization ceremony at Faneuil Hall. 338 people from 77 different countries took the oath of citizenship in a building that only held 700 people. The families were spilling out into Quincy Market. It was such a beautiful image. I want to bring naturalization ceremonies to baseball games. I want to bring them to football games. I want these kids to see that millions of people are still risking their lives to pursue their own American dreams in this great country. These kids have been given gifts. The privilege that my mom gave us to pursue that life, liberty, and happiness. And I couldn't be more grateful to her.
Well, we're taping this again around July 4th, 2025. What should we expect on July 4th, 2026?
So exciting. The movement and the moments. And let me just say, there's a couple of moments that are unprecedented, that have never happened before in this country, that are being planned as we speak. That is so unreal. If I showed you the screenshot of what we're planning, your first reaction, as it was for our commission, was, you've got to be kidding. It's happening. And it is happening. So stay tuned. Much more to come. But again, what I'm most excited about is continuing our programming long after 2026.
America's 250th anniversary is about more than reflecting on our past. It's about honoring the contributions of individuals who built this country, the innovations that put this country on the map, and a man on the moon, and imagining what the next 250 years might look like for our children and the generations to come. Those are the words of Rosie Rios, who chairs the U.S. Semiquincetennial Commission. Thank you for spending a little time with us on C-SPAN.
Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me, Peter.
All Q&A programs are available on our website or as a podcast on our C-SPAN Now app.